Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society. My name is Kelly Crocker and I'm one of the ministers here. Today I'm joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and the worship team of Linda Warren, Daniel Carnes, and Stephen Gregorius. Here at First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We're so very glad that you are with us. If you'd like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons. It is through these doors and to your right, next to the elevator. We also hope that you'll be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately following service, also out in the Commons. And for those of you joining us virtually, welcome to you as well. We are so very glad that you are with us. We hope that you can take a moment to watch the announcement slides following today's service to find out more about what's happening here at FUS. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time, joining together once again in community.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Here may you find a warm greeting, a kind word, a gentle touch.
Sometimes I feel like I have no friend.
Here may you find a community of support, a pulse of liberation, a vision of hope.
Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone.
Here may you find a song to sing, a moment of silence, a hand to hold.
Even when you are a long way from home.
May these walls give you shelter. May this community break through your loneliness, and may you feel the embrace of a larger spirit of life and love.
Come, let us worship together.
And we invite you now to rise in all the ways we do and join together in the words of affirmation as we light our chalice. We light this chalice, symbol of our faith, alive in this world, naming our vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community.
I invite you now to join me in singing hymn number 153 in the silver and gray hymnal, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." Stayed on freedom, woke up this morning with my mind. like to invite forward anyone who wants to come forward and hear a story this morning. Y'all are all right. Come on down. That's great. Whatever distance you want to be at. Hello. Hi. Good to see you. So here is a thing that I have to show you, first of all, this morning. Do you see that picture on the screen? Does anybody have any idea what it is? The man who never lied. That's a good point. Yes, it is connected to the story. So this is called an Adrinka symbol. Adrinka symbols come from West Africa, and they're a way of recording things and sharing ideas and information, a little bit like the letters that we use in English, the language that I'm speaking to you now, in order to write down words, and with writing down words, share ideas or share stories. But in English, each letter is a sound. Or, well, I mean, each letter is roughly one sound. English is weird. But Adrinka symbols are not just a sound. In fact, that's not really their point. Their point is that they record some sort of idea or value, or sometimes they just reference an entire story. So this one, the phrase that I've heard used, now, I'd be honest with you, I do not speak any of the indigenous languages of West Africa, so I'm relying on what other people tell me, but the phrase that I've been told this symbol represents is, what I hear, I will keep. What I hear, I will keep. Does anyone have any thought about what that could mean? We're going to say that out loud. What do you think?
Good advice.
Good advice. Well, okay, all right. So that suggests that you think it means something of value, right? So, gossip. Okay. So you're thinking about people sort of chattering to one another about this thing and that, and people keeping what they hear. Is that, yeah? Keeping secrets. Yes. So the thing about this is that we've got a couple of different explanations, right? Gossip, keeping secrets, and all of those things are probably fair, because the whole point of these symbols is that they can hold related but different ideas. So I've heard this explained as, what I hear, I will keep, means that I take in good information and I keep it. It's a way of learning, right? I listen for things that I want to know, and then I know them and I hold on to them. But another interpretation is, I listen and then I only share the things that are worth sharing. So it's like sort of the opposite of gossip. Like, other people might be gossiping, but if you are doing this symbol, then you keep, it stops with you, right? The gossip chain stops at you. And so this symbol represents wisdom and prudence. Prudence is making good decisions, usually about what not to do. And the picture, do you have any idea like what it's supposed to represent physically, like what the image might be trying to show us? Any thoughts? I'd love to hear your idea. That's right. I mean, you're right. There's a bunch of circles and ovals. That's absolutely true. And so what it's meant to represent is 4 ears. 4 ears all together, like a bunch of different people listening. And maybe only one of them having the good sense to not repeat what they hear. So here is a story that feels to me connected to this symbol and to the theme of listening and only sharing prudently. So once upon a time, there was a man who never lied. He was very famous for the fact that he never told a lie. He only said the truth without fail, no matter what the circumstances were. And he was so famous that the king wanted to meet him. So he said to his vizier, go get this man. I want to meet him. Bring him here. And so he did. And the man who never lied went to meet the king. And the king said, is it true that you've never told a lie in your whole life? Not even a little fib? Not even an exaggeration? Nothing? He said, that's true. I have never told a lie. The king said, well, be careful, because it's hard to tell the truth all the time. And the king decided that he was going to play a game with this man, and he was going to find a way to make him tell a lie. So he went and he climbed halfway up onto his horse, like he just had one foot in the stirrup, right? Like he's almost onto the back of the horse. And he turned as he had his one foot in the stirrup, and he said to the man who has never lied, I want you to go to the queen and tell her that I'm going hunting, and I will be home for dinner and to make a big feast, because we're going to have a big feast when I get back from hunting. And the man who had never lied left to follow the king's instruction. But the king turned to everyone else who was there and said, aha, I'm going to go and I'm not going to come back until tomorrow. So when the man who has never lied tells the queen what I told him to tell her, it won't be true and he will have lied. So what do you think the man who has never lied did? What do you think that he did when he was given this instruction? He went to tell the queen what the king had told him to tell him. Any thoughts?
I know.
Charlie.
Actually, it was one thing, but if he lied, he would actually be easy to know.
Okay. So here's what happened. He wanted to follow the instructions from the king, but he knew that he didn't actually know what was going to happen. So he told the queen, maybe you should make a big feast. Maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. And she said, well, what do you mean you don't know? Well, I know that the king told me that he was going to go hunting. And he told me he was going to be back tonight. And he told me he wanted to have a big meal at the end of the journey. But I don't know if that happened or not. So it's up to you. And in this way, he maintained his reputation as a man who had never lied, because he didn't say anything that he didn't know to be true. All right, so there's a wonderful activity, very exciting. I'm told it involves toothpaste that you're all invited to take part in. And in fact, Reverend Kelly is going to help you with it. So let's sit. I invite you now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also our outreach offering recipient, whom this week is Kuji Chagalia. The Kuji Chagalia Center for Self-Determination works to unite Madison's African American communities in addressing social disparities in pursuit of economic empowerment. One of the ways that they do this is by organizing our city's celebrations for the Juneteenth holiday each year. You'll see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org, and you'll also see our text to give information there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together. Always want to check. When I was in seminary, I was actually talking with Tom about this time right before the service. When I was in seminary and in training to become a minister, one of my professors received some threatening letters. It wasn't completely clear what the person who sent those letters was targeting my teacher for exactly. It was clear that they didn't like his values and his public voice and who he was as a person. But was it for his academic work on interreligious dialogue, his AIDS advocacy, his challenges to theological systems of homophobia, patriarchy, and white supremacy, or simply the fact that he was a queer black person in a position of prominence and leadership? Not certain. And it seems to me that having a thirst for justice so strong and so varied that your opponents have all manner of different hateful motives in threatening you is a sign of a life well lived. But it is still a very frightening one. It was, above all, a heavy burden for my professor and for his family. He also recognized that it was that the threat against him posed some incidental danger to his students and to the school itself. Now, thankfully, the incident never went further than menacing words from an anonymous source. But the next several weeks were not always comfortable for those of us in his classes, and I cannot imagine what it must have been like for him to teach through. For a while, members of his congregation took turns sitting in on his classes, prepared to intervene if someone with the intent to harm chose to target him there. And in order both to feel supported by us, his students, and to help to support us in return, my teacher added a new component to each class before and after his excellent, insightful lectures. He asked us to sing with him. We sang songs from a variety of sources: Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Unitarian Universalist. Some that he picked out for us, and some that other folks in the class offered up. There was comfort in singing together through that time. Not in the sense that it made the danger go away. The threats were just as real if we were singing as if we weren't. But making music was something we could do together. Some little taste of collective action in the face of an anxious-making thing that we had very little control over. In the predicament of any sort of unfreedom, political marginalization, social ostracization, material oppression, or warranted fear for one's own well-being or the well-being of others, the human spirit chafes and thrashes. Our inner selves yearn for freedom quite naturally. Still, it is rarely a simple thing to gain. Systemic oppression takes the work of long years and countless hands to dismantle. And even truly individual circumstances can be difficult to overcome or escape. There is no replacing the literal breaking of chains, the throwing open of the prison door, the offering of food or means or medicine to bodies constrained and stifled by hunger or poverty or disease. But there is metaphorical work to the project of liberation too. A person or a people cannot be truly free if they cannot imagine what freedom might be like first. Because of this, people yearning to be free have, since as far back as can be reckoned, developed practices that offer some foretaste of that freedom. The feeling of being liberated from whatever circumstances diminish us, however temporarily. Consider, for example, the Jewish holiday of Purim, which retells the story of the scroll of Esther right around the transition from winter to spring each year. So here's your refresher course on the book of Esther if you're not really up on that particular book of the Hebrew Bible. Esther's book begins in ancient Persia, when the king Ahasuerus ruled an empire from India to Ethiopia. Among the many people of his empire were Jews who had been taken into exile by the Babylonians and passed into the authority of Persia after Babylon fell. King Ahasuerus paid no attention to running his government and spent his days enjoying himself with parties and feasts. At one of these parties, he called on his wife, Vashti, to come forward and display her beauty to his guests. There were some lewd implications to this request. Vashti refused the king, making her a heroic, biblical, feminist, and resulting in Ahasuerus divorcing and banishing her from the rest of the story. A new wife was sought for the king, and it was commanded that the most beautiful maidens in the empire should be assembled, and he would choose amongst these. Esther was one of the women summoned to the palace. She was an orphan who had been adopted by her older cousin, Mordecai. The beauty contest took a long time to complete, and each day Mordecai paced in front of the palace gate, hoping to learn how Esther was doing. Even without fancy makeup, clothes, or jewelry, Ahasuerus found Esther to be the most beautiful of all and chose her to take Vashti's place. Neither he nor anyone else at the palace knew that Esther was a Jew. She had told no one, and Mordecai warned her not to share the secret. King Ahasuerus, besides being generally incompetent and very misogynistic, had a villainous prime minister named Haman. As Mordecai spent his days outside the palace gates, he encountered Haman and ran afoul of him when he refused to bow to the pompous minister. In a scene-chewingly evil turn, Haman spun his grudge against Mordecai into a universal hatred of his people. Using his influence over the foolish and incompetent king, Haman convinced him to order the destruction of all the Jews in his empire at a certain date several months away. When Mordecai learned of the plot, he sent word to Esther that she needed to convince Ahasuerus to rescind the edict and save her people. But hers was not a marriage in any sort of modern egalitarian sense. There was nothing like equality between her and the king, and monogamy was not really his bag. Esther saw Ahasuerus only when he summoned her, and at the time she had not seen him for a month. If she or anyone else went to see the king without his invitation, and he did not approve of the visit, the punishment was death. "Do not imagine," replied Mordecai, that you of all the Jews will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. And who knows, perhaps you have attained a royal position for just such a crisis. There are times and places where it is dangerous or costly to reveal the fullness of who you are. In Philip Roth's novel, The Human Stain, the character Coleman Silk leads a life built out of the secret, that he is an African American living as a white Jew. In the formative period of the movement for gay and lesbian rights in this country, and particularly after the outbreak of the AIDS pandemic, activists called upon same-sex attracted men and women of power and influence who were living in the closet to use their resources and their influence in defense of the community. And there were some, perhaps many, who would not do so, afraid that it would reveal the truth of who they were and whom they loved. "Your silence will not protect you," wrote the poet and activist Audre Lorde, in a sentence that is almost paraphrasing Mordecai. This was the position that Esther found herself in. Great personal risk over a great personal secret, and the certainty that if she did nothing, a great many people without the privilege to keep themselves secret in the same way would suffer greatly. If we imagine ourselves for a moment as Esther, we must answer honestly as to which course we would choose. It may also be, for some of us, that we have already faced a moment in which danger would come from revealing ourselves, when some good was possible from it as well. So Esther answered Mordecai, "I shall go to see the king, though it is against the law, and if I die, I die." Now the story has a happy ending. The scheduled destruction of the Jews is averted, Haman gets his comeuppance, and Mordecai is even named prime minister in his stead. But this is the moment on which all of that turns. "I shall go to see the king, though it is against the law, and if I die, I die." The celebration of Purim and its rituals retell this story with an emphasis on audience participation. Revelers are enjoined to boo Haman and to cheer Mordecai, and encouraged to come in costume as well, most traditionally as one of the characters from the story. The tale is lived again, and those who tell it and listen to it are challenged to apply its details and lessons to their own present lives. Now, as tomorrow marks the formal date of Juneteenth, that celebration of the final official ending of slavery in the United States, it seems right to draw another example from the ingenuity of enslaved people of African origin on this continent. The term ring shout applies to a whole related family of practices originating among enslaved populations in the American South and parts of the Caribbean. All of them involve some practice of circular group dancing centered around an altar or a church building or some other sacred point of focus. Sometimes there is drumming, sometimes there is chanting, and often, though not always, there is shouting. Almost always the group practice goes on for a long time, sometimes to the point of exhaustion for the participants. Now, there is some debate as to the origin of the ring shout. In some tellings, it is derived from indigenous West African religious and cultural practices, earth-centered traditions, as are still practiced in that part of the world by some people today. Another theory has it growing out of the memory of the way Muslim pilgrims to Mecca circle around the Kaaba, the point which observant Muslims turn towards 5 times a day to pray. It's an underappreciated historical reality that somewhere between 20% and a full third of the folks who were brought to this continent as part of the African slave trade were Muslim. There's enough regional variation in the many things called ring shouts that it seems to me that both explanations could be true. It could be both things at once. Either way, the ritual shows the incredible capacity of people stolen from their homeland, whose religion, culture, and language was forbidden by their captors, to still persevere and reconstitute some elements of what was taken from them, to make something new out of something old, and most importantly, something of their own, in a context where law and the force of violence said that they themselves were not even their own. Despite its origins in earth-centered spiritual traditions or in Islam or both, the ring shout as it currently exists is an explicitly Christian practice, unique to certain branches of the Black church, mainly Pentecostal ones. But rituals of liberation do not need to be religious at all. The culture of drag performances created by the underground queer community over the last century or so celebrates and enacts a temporary liberation for performers and audiences alike by dismantling the walls between gender expectations. Drag as an art form emphasizes that the self we show to the world is always a performance and calls for facets of the self that are new or hidden or especially vulnerable to come out to play. Now, all of these examples have been collective ones, but even that is not strictly necessary. We human beings are more powerful in groups and better at making meaning when we come together to do so. But even as individuals, we can practice and benefit from our own personal rituals. It might be something as obvious as time spent in meditation, as straightforward as making music, or as particular as taking an intentional moment to imagine yourself in the life you feel called to, rather than the one you feel stuck in. The point is not the action or activity, but the effect, the small sample of life in the fullness of its possibilities, enough to stoke the appetite for more. Back there in seminary, in that time when we were singing together each class, one of the songs that our professor chose for us has a version in our hymnal, although it is older than the hymnal itself, as all the songs in it are. You might be familiar with it. We're going to sing it a little later, so you'll get a chance. One of the verses that is not in our hymnal, so we won't be singing it this morning, says, "Friends don't treat me like they used to since I laid my burden down." We sang that song together, "Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down." And we were invited to add our own verses about what the burden was. The burden of misogyny, the burden of racism, the burden of homophobia, the burden of hatred or contempt or dehumanization of anyone, including ourselves. There is a weight to carrying out injustice. It's not the same as the people who suffer from it. I'm not trying to make an equivalence there. But there is a weight to it, a burden to the transgressor. And it is something worth laying down when we give ourselves the opportunity to do so. We gather each week, carrying with us all the joys, the losses, the celebrations and sorrows of our days. We bring them here knowing they are held in love and support. We light a candle in celebration and acknowledgement of Father's Day. We offer a blessing to the fathers and dads among us in their caring, nurturing, and protecting work as parents to those children who are theirs to care for, whether by birth or by adoption or by any other means. We also make space in our hearts for those who struggle on this day, children who have lost fathers to death or estrangement or some other breach of relationship, fathers who have lost children to any of the same, and all those who are not fathers, though they long to be. We light a candle of memory, sorrow, and gratitude for the life of Reverend Jerry Moser, who passed away on Thursday evening. Jerry was a member here for many years, an affiliated minister with the congregation. He sang in our choir, worked with our Quest program, our lay ministry program, conducted worship, counseled and supported so very many of you. Jerry's gentle spirit, warm nature, and compassionate heart impacted this community very deeply. We send our love to his wife, Anne, their children and families, and to all who are missing and mourning Jerry today. We know his tenderness and love remain here with us. And we light a candle to mourn the violence in our world, here in our own nation and around the globe. We know there are never enough candles to symbolize the pain, hold the anger, or cradle the tears. May this light fuel our passion for change and our hunger for justice. And I invite you now to join me in an attitude of prayer and meditation with these words from Marjorie Bowens-Wheatley and Clyde Grubbs. The road of history is long, full of both hope and disappointment. In times past, there have been wars and rumors of wars, violence and exploitation, hunger and homelessness, and destruction of this earth. We have become a global village with a growing realization of how fragile this earth is and how interconnected we are to each other and to all creation. We cannot continue to live in the old way. We must make a change, see a new way, a way towards peace with justice and a healthy planet. O great creative Spirit, you have given a vision of the good, and we yearn for a new way, but where are we to find the courage to begin this work? We know that a different tomorrow is possible, but how can we build it? We think of the prophets, all those who voiced unpopular opinions, who made personal sacrifices, and sometimes lost their lives for the sake of justice. We think of Isaiah, who called out to let those who are held in captivity go free, to give solace to the poor and homeless. Let us be inspired by all who work to overcome misery, poverty, and exploitation. We think of Harriet Tubman, who called out to people of goodwill to join her on an underground railroad, to lift a dehumanized people from the bondage of slavery to the promise of freedom, even when it meant challenging unjust laws. Let us be inspired by those who are outlaws for freedom. We think of Gandhi, whose belief in soul force, the witness to love's truth, helped to overthrow the oppression of an empire and gave witness to the way of nonviolent action. Let us be inspired to become witnesses for peace. We think of Chief Seattle, who reminded us that we belong to the earth, not the earth to us. Let us be inspired by all those who work for the healing of creation, of Mother Earth and all her creatures. Who are the prophets who inspire you? They may be well known or known only to you, offering personal inspiration, courage, and hope. May they join a great cloud of witnesses to a new way of life, the way of peace and justice, the way of justice lived according to the way of peace, the beloved community. So may it be. Amen. There is a love holding us. There is a love. invite you to rise one more time in body and or spirit as we sing together hymn number 201, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. May the truth that makes us free, and the hope that never dies, and the love that casts out all fear lead us forward together till the day breaks and the shadows flee away. Blessed be, go in peace, and please be at rest for the postlude.
reminding Dan that when we recorded this in the loggia, and he was like panning all around during the pandemic,